can AMD smash earnings this time around? And I think that there's definitely a case for this to be a yes. I'm going to explain why here. So AMD, there's two different chips that you can go with if you're buying a PC. Okay. It's AMD and Intel. And AMD is becoming an absolute monster. I guess you can make the opinion here that it is an absolute monster. It is taking away market share from Intel at a relatively decent clip here. And demand for PCs and demand for AMD's chips is still very strong despite supply chain issues as well. The stock has come down significantly, nearly 50% from its highs. And I think that there's reason to believe that this actually goes higher. AMD has earnings on Tuesday. That's tomorrow, May 3rd, after hours. And I think that this is going to be a very exciting time for AMD. The estimated earnings per share are going to be at 91 cents. The estimated revenue is at $5.52 billion. Now, that is actually very small compared to what Intel's is. It's around a little bit more than double that. But they are really starting to take up a lot of market share, and they really are winning the game as far as their nanotechnology is concerned. They are leaps and bounds ahead of Intel as far as that technology is concerned. And a lot of people compared AMD in the semiconductor space to like an NVIDIA. But what AMD does is far different than what NVIDIA does. The main business as far as NVIDIA is concerned, everybody knows them for their graphics card, whereas AMD is more on the processing side as far as PCs are concerned. Now, we can go into all kinds of other things as far as the moat that each one of these companies have built around themselves. But I just kind of wanted to focus on this demand revolving around PCs in general. And really the only other competitor to them is Intel. And if you just look at the way that Intel is kind of coming down off of their high as far as just being the leader in this space, AMD is really starting to take up market share, and it isn't even close as far as the speed in which they are growing. The forward PE on AMD is at 21 times next year's earnings, which in this space right now seems a bit cheap. The overall S&P right now is trading around 17 times next year's earnings, and this is a growth stock that has a lot going for it. Let's take a look at the chart real quick to determine the possible next steps, whether or not AMD beats those earnings. All right, so you can see here, 84.02 is the recent bottom. It is the year-to-date bottom, and it's unbelievable to think that we saw this trading at all the way $165 per share just in November. So these are levels that we haven't seen since July of 2021. So about almost a year ago is where we are seeing this at now. Now, can AMD come down lower? Absolutely. But it does look like we're seeing a potential bottom here on the chart. And if those earnings are good and the outlook is great, we could see AMD start to make its return back to $100 per share, which I think is honestly not that much of a stretch for the company. If it doesn't do well and investors respond poorly, then I think that it breaks down below that $84, especially with the only trading at around 86. Not that much of a stretch. So if that does happen, I think there's a potential for AMD to come down to 80, maybe even $75 per share, which is kind of where it lived at for the most part of 2021 before it started to really ramp up. Now, we saw how crazy this got before, right? And you could certainly make the argument that it got way ahead of itself, and we're living in a different time, especially from a macro perspective. But AMD, in my opinion, when you look at the semiconductor space, this is a leader, an all-out leader. And I think that, in my opinion, when you look at the way the valuation is compared to some of its other competitors and just how much this has come down, and I don't want to take away from the fact that every time you might be seeing this in the headlines as well, it's like, oh, well, just because it's come down this far doesn't mean it can't go down lower. And I 100% agree with that. You've even heard me say that from time to time. But just given how much this is traded down here, the valuation, the chart, everything looks attractive about this. The risk reward is certainly good. RSI is trading around 37. So to me, I think that this actually looks like a pretty decent trade, even going into earnings. You can make the argument that earnings, you might want to wait till after earnings just in case, which I totally don't blame you there. I mean, we've seen some surprises along the way, and AMD isn't a stranger to selling off after earnings. So maybe the play is to wait till after earnings. After all, the upside potential here is definitely gigantic. I think that AMD should be a $160 stock within the next 12 months. which means that I could go up nearly 100% from here. So let me know what you guys think about in the comments below. I'm also going to be covering Airbnb's earnings as well. So make sure you're hitting that. I think it's over here. It might be over here. Whatever. One of the boxes that you'll see pop up on Airbnb's earnings. Please click that. I'll also be live for these AMD earnings at 3:45 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you're hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.